Hey, what's going on? It's Bebop here, and today's video we're going to be going over the Flail as far as tanking. We're going to also cover the sword and shield and great sword, a little bit on the great sword, but mainly Flail and sword and shield. What is best to use? Well, it changes throughout each dungeon, but right here we're going to talk about the Flail first. You see I got haste right there for about 6 seconds with the Flail using the vortex. That is really good in Glacial Tarn, because if you know, the enemies hit you, and when they do, they apply a slow. And as a tank, if you get slowed and they keep hitting you and you keep stumbling, one, you look dumb. Two, I'm about to look dumb right here as I get bounced out the club a number of times, but you will be slow getting to the point, and you might have DPS start trying to hit, or the healer heal to help you. Next thing you know, they're getting aggro and it's just a cluster. Okay, so that haste will get you from point A to point B really quickly. It can also get your DPS from point A to point B quickly and cleanse them. Now, once I get my footing in the ground here and wake up and start actually tanking instead of getting bounced around, we can get going to the next zone. I will be cutting through a little bit on this video so we don't take up the whole time. I couldn't find an M3 to get going, so ended up getting in this M1. Basically going to show you the same thing in an M3, but this one's far easier, of course. I'm used to the greatsword right here, just going right through these enemies. With the Flail, obviously, that's a great offensive line right there. The Cowboys could use those guys. You know, couldn't get around them right there. Kind of looked like a dum-dum, and then the DPS start hitting. Exactly what I was just explaining. So, you want to bring all these enemies down. One thing that's really good is the bludgeon for the Flail. It's going to fortify and empower your teammates that are around. The smite is going to weaken the enemies and also fortify you, I believe 20 or 30%. So the hammer is good for CC. As you will see, it still is useful. I usually like to hammer or heavy hammer now, since we don't have grit and light attacks, and then stun and clear out all the stuff I can do to help the team. With the Flail, all right. Also, once you get the fire, you see that ice buff, that little target sign that was on the wall, and I barely hit for what, 500 damage, and then I start hitting for better damage. That is a ice buff throughout enemies in the dungeon. If they have that buff, you won't do much damage to them without the fire. I'm wondering where my teammates are, and they will also hit you way harder. So a lot of people have been asking, why am I getting hit so hard this week in Glacial Tarn? Well, you're not ice protected because you're void mutation this week, and they have the buff, the ice buff, so you have to have the flame on you and then hit them while you have the flame, and that will take away their buff. If you don't do that, you will get one shot even if you are the tank, and that's what a lot of y'all are experiencing right now. And trust me, when this dungeon first came out, we all experienced it, and it sucked, okay? Because the first week was ice, which was BIS. Anytime Tarn's ice, that's what people are running. And then when it went to void or fire or whatever the next week, it was just death everywhere, okay? Now, as we make our way out of that fight, come over here, grab the fire and your goodies. Now that we have the fire buff for 40, or I guess it was 50 seconds, when you go through the tunnel tanks, you're going to have to hit some of the enemies, especially the archer, or the archer is going to one-shot. See how they're not doing any damage and that buff was right there on the wall? It's because they don't have fire. They are still learning. Now, there will be fire at the end of the hallway, but since you have it on you, go ahead and give these guys a little love tap. Usually knock the archer down or stun him would be best. There he goes. There's his buff, and now it's gone. Good thing those icicles aren't hitting for whatever reason right now, because I would have got bounced. This little tunnel is dangerous. A lot of times people will pull that big guy into the mobs that we first pulled, and then that way you can kill them and have a little bit easier time coming through here. Now, the DPS started hitting those mobs in the back, so here I go. I got to go re-aggro because he's not coming to the tank. He's just being a warrior back there hidden by himself. You need to go to the tank. If you have aggro, stop trying to hit the mobs by yourself. And having the tank to come all the way over here is just absolutely, you know, ridiculous, but, you know, they're new, so it is what it is. They're learning. Try to take that example and, you know, learn from it, use it. All right, once we clear those guys, now we're on to the boss fight. Never fight these enemies. You don't have the fire buff, and there's no point of fighting these enemies. You're going to get mob count no matter what in this dungeon anyways. So just go ahead and go right on through. Tanks, be very cautious in this boss fight. If the DPS all goes ranged, then you need to bring in a either spear or a hammer that does Sundering Clear Out, maybe Sundering Shockwave, and you put on Armor Breaker. If the DPS does not have anybody on the boss applying rend, they will not hit hard no matter what their stats or coatings are. They're going to hit for low damage. So then it's upon you, tank, unfortunately, to bring a spear in or a hammer and apply the rend. A spear, I think, would be best because you go Enfeebling Skewer, and then you can enfeeble the boss, make him weaker 47% for 8 seconds, and then you can also perforate him. And then you can also, you know, Cyclone if you want, get Leeching Cyclone, get some of your health back, or you can just Enfeebling Skewer him, perforate him, and then get back to your sword and shield. You need to time out your grid attacks with this guy. If he busts your stam open, then you need to go ahead and save your defender's resolve for when that happens, so you can fight through any slams / icicles that he might be doing. Give everybody some fortify here, weaken the boss. Not everybody fortify. Myself fortify and weaken the boss. We gotta watch out for when he's skating here and try to always prepare for that. If you run at a straight line like that, you need to run toward the middle, I guess would be the best way to explain it. Angles, people, angles. He's gonna dash straight at one point of where you are, all right? It's a set point. He doesn't turn and follow you. So knowing that there's a set point, you basically keep running toward the middle or at a horizontal angle, and that way he will always miss you. All right, once you get done with that fight, switch back to your main dungeon set, and let's go to the next part. Now, this Reaver and Mage you always skip, so go ahead and hit your Vortex with the Flail and get your haste, get moving. Now these Reavers will come at you and they will start sliding. This is where you want to go on hammer full time tanks. You can go ahead and get your weaken pulled down so they get weakened when they come in. And you can just go ahead and start building up your CCs. If you don't do that, they will skate around and dash, and next thing you know, DPS are knocked. Especially on M3, it's just always like a one shot. And the clear out will also give any teammates that are in 4 meters from you, it will give them fortify. So that's really good to have. On this boss, always try to get around him, turn his back toward the DPS when they come up. Kind of failed at doing that right here. I think I put to sleep. Oh man. The Flail has pretty attacks. That purple stuff looks really cool. It's probably one of the coolest looking, you know, ability weapons that there is. The Volgon looks the best because it looks like the Halo sword or something, but the Flail does have some nice attack. I saw one of the enemies turn back there. Healers have to be very careful that they don't leave beacon or any healing going on while the door's about to open and the next pool is about to begin, because those mobs will turn back if anybody ticks for heals. So you kind of want to stop your heals early and let the DPS heal themselves, or else aggro is everywhere. And of course in M1 and M2 there is never a great axe to be found to group up enemies, so it is a complete cluster. I know a lot of you new players don't really realize what the great axe is, but it's one of the most important weapons to have in a dungeon. Usually the main spearman will have the great axe and group up everybody, put the vines down to hold them in place, but you need to learn the great axe, the mechanics, and actually use it in a PvE format, not PvP format. All right, this is where it turns to humans right here. So you would put on your human ward pot, human coatings. The healer will usually shoot that mage up there down, or the archer up there down, so that way you can kill all those really quickly right there. And then while these are grouped up nice and tight, I'm going to them. Okay, I don't want them split out too far. Now this guy usually starts off with a stomp and then ice slam. That ice slam comes up from the ground, will one-shot teammates at an M3 level. Very important to have the fire on you when fighting these mobs, or else you won't do any damage. And they will be buffed and they will do all the damage in the world. If for some reason you somehow wipe at this shrine, it is the worst shrine in the game to have to respawn at, because by the time you respawn in, that dude's stomping and icickling from the bottom, and you just get one shot, and then it's just nonstop. And then you got the cooldown for the respawn. It's terrible. Trust me. Been there. Done that. Sucks. Don't wipe there. Now that we still have the fire on us, we're going to go down here, fight the other enemies. Watch out for the stomp first. Boom. Now the ice. All right. There we go. Get aggro on everything. Gravity or Gravwell would be thrown here to kind of group up as best you can. They do move still, but it helps out. Stamina damage is the only way to CC this guy, so none of your hammer stuns are going to work. If you have someone with a great sword or your hammer, you're going to go trench and strikes. If you have that on there, you can just heavy attack to bust down their stamina, or just heavy attack in general will be just fine. Bust that dude's stamina down, and then you can kill him. And right here, you can grab the fire if you want. Not really a need to, but sometimes I just like grabbing it. And we come through here, aggro these guys. Someone's going to step on the first button to the left there. Now, if you have an ice pylon in the group, they can step on the button, then put the ice pylon down, and it will hold it just fine. The musket traps do not work there, so don't worry about doing that. Tank will always go second room here. Step on the button. The other DPS will go straight ahead. For some reason, some came up here, I guess, you know, because they're learning. But someone needed to go to the other button because this took way too long. And you want to always skip these mobs. So I'm trying to do my best right here to CC. Now when I see the door open, I'm going to hit Vortex to get a little haste. It's opening now. Vortex, get some health, get some haste, and I'm out. This enemy is very tanky. Not only that, the archer will still be shooting down on y'all from the top. So you need to try to hug this corner as best you can, or else DPS might get one shot from the archer. Just remember that in M3s because it happens a lot. Now this guy has a lot of health. You need a lot of rend on this guy. You need some CC and you just need a lot of damage. Watch out for the void on the ground. And M3, every time you do 4 hits, you will snap the void on your feet. So you're going to have to dodge it or else you will be on the ground. It hurts, especially on a boss like this, little mini boss, where everybody's stacked up behind them. That's 3 snaps on the ground at the healer's void blade, and then you got 4. It's brutal. All right, after that mob's killed, now it's on to the next area. Now I like going this way for the lava section. To me, it's just easier. 2 jumps. The other one with the new jump just feels weird, so figure out whichever way you like best. The one on the right is my way I came up with because I'm freaking wicked smat. I don't know, it just seems a lot easier. Try it out, let me know what you think. Stamina bust this guy. The lightning will hit no matter what. So, you know, even if he gets knocked down where he hunches over, the lightning, if he started it, will hit. So you will need a whole block in an M3 or else one shot happens. Now to the final boss, and let's get our slash set on. All right, we are here at the final boss. Let's jump in, see what happens. Now tanks need to learn how to pre-time. Okay, before his health bar comes up, about a second before, you need to get the timing down and learn how to pre-taunt so you immediately have aggro. That way DPS can just start hitting right away, and they're going to anyway. So if you don't pre-taunt, they will get aggro. And just for anybody wondering how to tell if you have aggro or not, if you look at the health bar up at the very top, if you go back about 30 seconds and look, it was basically bland. And then when you have aggro, it's all lit up bright red. Now this boss is very, very tricky. Now tanks, a lot of tanking is also positioning. You cannot put the DPS in a bad spot. Will it happen? Yes. You need to minimize the amount of times that happens, because if you chase this guy all over, you're putting them in a very bad spot and they will die. You need to make sure you maintain your position. See how he's moving forward right there? If I would have stayed there, he would have turned real hard and hit all the DPS. Now he's in a very bad spot. I got to completely figure out the situation here. I'm trying to pull him to the middle. That way I can adjust my back toward the big boss in the middle. That way they have all that room for activities. But with the slam coming in right there, it was a little bit tricky. So it's a little unorganized right now. It's going to happen. DPS will have to adjust, and they have to understand that you're trying to do your best. Sometimes these boss fights, these are how it's designed, is to go ahead and backswing on the DPS and make it really difficult. Also, there is also an audio cue whenever the guy's doing his breath for the ice on the ground. You need to listen for it. You will get used to it after some time. That way you can start going and you don't even have to look at the boss. Now, I usually keep my back toward the big guy so I can, you know, have DPS look at the big guy and they can see when he's going to do any attacks. But he was disabled right there. Wasn't really a big deal because they took out the mages or the casters. The casters do disable him. If you took out the casters right now, you wouldn't even have to shoot the green dots. So if you want to get their health down low and then take them out when the green dots spawn, you can. I just say take out the dots. It's going to be faster because I believe their shield comes back up and you got to bust that shield before you can bust their health whenever the green dots come up. But that's how that mechanic kind of works. Watch out for random targeting here. He will throw icicles at the healer or anybody far away. Same thing with the ice. So tank usually call out what he's doing. And anytime he dashes with the eyes behind him like that, DPS, be very careful. The ice on the ground hits really hard. Even if your eye's protected, doesn't matter. It's going to hit really hard. And then with his slashes, you know, it's really going to hurt too. So you got to be careful. DPS should have a slash amulet on at the bare minimum if they're going to be melee here. If they're going to be ranged, do whatever you want. Right here, he's empowered. So you're not going to do any damage to him. DPS, this is where you need to bring in a ranged and shoot the green orbs. I was afraid maybe some of them might die, so I'm going to go ahead and start trying to do damage to the casters. Did not see a shield there, so not sure. I don't think they respawn whenever the green orbs come up. Initial shield was there, but the healer took it out, I guess. And now I'm going to make my way to the other one because I just don't know if the other DPS is going to make it. But he ended up making it, taking out the green orbs, so we're good to go on that. Now we get his DPS, the boss down, and get out of here. So you see the uses for Flail. The Flail's really good for tanking. There's some other abilities you can go with if you want the dash, I believe, barrage, I believe it's called. Then you can have that to get through enemies, like those two ancients that were basically an offensive line right there, stopping me at the very beginning of the dungeon. You can if you want. This is the set I like to go with and the abilities I like to go with for the Flail. I'll go over the setup of the clothing and stuff here after this, dungeon ends. And you also got to see Sword and Shield and a combo of the Sword and Shield and Flail in boss fights, okay? So it's not one size fit all. You need to learn how to do all of them as a tank because you will use all of them throughout dungeons if you want to maximize your ability and your skill and the team's ability. So, hope you all enjoyed that. Let's get into some of the gear. First of all, we're going to start off with my main tanking set for Glacial Tarn. Now, I set it up with the Flail because I wanted to show you all. A lot of y'all been asking about the Flail and how does it compare to the Great Sword and Sword and Shield. Well, to me, I think it's just fine. I actually prefer it in Glacial Tarn, and I'll explain why. Is because the enemies will slow you a lot of times when they hit you, okay? So, the Flail will naturally give you haste whenever you use Mending Vortex. And that haste will help you get around and to the next point really quickly. Also, if the mob's about to die and use that vortex, you can get a boost, and tank needs to be out leading the way anyway, so the DPS don't have to wait because they can roly-pole dodge to you and they'll catch up to you quick. So I use it in combination with the hammer because I do like the CC effects. Refreshing move, hated, Sundering Glare, Abyss, and I use the Stone Form. Now you can pick whichever stone form you want to use. It's up to you. That's the one I use. Feel free to adjust. Now, as far as the gear, it is Void Week. Now, I like to run Azoth crystal gear when I'm tanking. A lot of people were asking about the Frigid Dawn set. Let's say like the gloves here, Elemental Aversion, and Chain of Ward. What to put on there for the third perk. To me, as a tank, I like refreshing. A lot of tanks will forget about refreshing and they'll go health. Your cooldowns are going to help you stay alive better than health will. As soon as you can get your defender's resolve up or your bludgeon with the flail and get your fortify for you and your group members and empowerment, the better you are off. Okay, health will only save you a little bit. Your abilities are huge in this game. Okay, that's what's going to pull you through and do your damage and your fortify. So don't forget about refreshing if you tank. And also remember, the more you do, especially M3s, and the better you get more mutation materia. Well, you can make plenty of these sets. Over my time on the main Bebop account, I've gotten plenty of Frigidon sets, and you can just put on there. You can have a PvP set, you can have a PvE set, and you can have a set with each different type of gem, so you don't have to ever worry about gemming again. And you'll be good to go. Okay, you got plenty of time. Don't try to rush everything. But the Azoth Crystal set for me, Enchanted Ward and Refreshing, is what's really, really good about this set. Now, Legion Cyclone, I was going to tank some with the Spear and try that out in Glacial Tarn, but really the Hammer's just so good. The CC is really important because when the Reavers start sliding around, they can really knock DPS in one shot at the M3 level. So Hammer is still, in my opinion, really good. But Enchanted Ward and Refreshing. Enchanted Ward is the best perk for PvE content. Elemental Aversion is barely going to help you in PvE. It's really a PvP perk, not a PvE perk. So Enchanted Ward and Refreshing that comes on all the Azoth Crystal sets is, in my opinion, better than the Frigid Dawn set. So Enchanted Ward, Refreshing, and Health. I have the Frigid Dawn gloves here because it was already gemmed. I didn't feel like regemming, but it comes with a Refreshing also, so we're 4 out of 4 on that. So we can get our cooldowns better. We have Elia Verge, Enchanted Ward, and Health. And we have Enchanted Ward, Refreshing, and Health. I have Despise, Nimble, Purifying Toast. Now, if you're in Starstone, that's nature. Purifying Toast will really help you get it out of being rooted from the nature. I have Strike Damage, Hardy, and Sacred. Sacred to help some with the outgoing healing of the Flail when I do the Vortex. Usually for the boss fight, because I switch up to this Flail for the boss fight. I didn't want to regem it because I'm not going to lose aggro in a boss fight. And the Mini Vortex will help heal the teammates. Also has Blessed on there. And with the Sacred in combination, it's going to just boost healing and give my teammates some haste so they can get out of the way if icicles are falling. Hardy for the stamina, and then Strike Damage for the heavy attacks that I will be doing to keep my grit. And I also have Trenchant Strikes on the Flail. Hated Keenly Jag. Keenly Jag to inflict bleed to help maintain aggro. The Amulet, or Amulet, the Ambulance. The Ambulance is Fortify, Recovering, Health, Void Protection. And I really like that as a tank. Anything with Fortify, it's good to go. So that is my first set. That's going through the main part of the dungeon. Now, the second set will be the boss set, okay? Now, for the boss set, I do like to have some strike conditioning because the boss does a lot of strike damage. So that is really good. Now, on this set, I do have other pieces that really mimics Azoth Crystal set. Enchanted Ward, Refreshing. And then I have Khan here. And then we got Azoth Crystal, Enchanted Ward, Refreshing, and Strike Conditioning. Enchanted Ward, Sundering Shockwave, and Strike Conditioning. In case I want to use the hammer in the boss fight, I could Sundering Clear out with the hammer, add some rend, and then the rend from Sundering Shockwave. That's if all my DPS go range. They're not going to be hitting very hard because there's no rend on the boss. So then you would need to account for that and apply the rend. Then you would switch out the flail for the hammer. And now we have the Enchanted Ward, Refreshing, and Slash Conditioning. And we have Enchanted Ward, Refreshing, Slash Conditioning. Slash Conditioning is really going to be for the final boss. I have Frozen Protection, or Frozen Shield Ward, Sturdy, Shield Defense, Fortify Shield Rush. Fortify Shield Rush is going to help you also maintain some Fortify. When he starts icicling you or breaks your stam, you can rush through that and grit, and you'll be just fine. Strike Protection as the Amulet. And we have Leeching / Hardy Damage, Refreshing Toast, Nimble, and Despised. Now, on the last set here, we have Enchanted Ward, Refreshing / Conditioning. This is the final boss set. So Slash is what he does. This will help protect you from a lot of his damage, especially when he's empowered. / Conditioning, Enchanted Ward, Refreshing. Enchanted Ward, Refreshing / Conditioning. Enchanted Ward, Refreshing / Conditioning. Enchanted Ward, Refreshing / Conditioning. Enchanted Ward / Shield Ward. I have the Butcher, which is really good. Bleeds last 33% longer on weapon. Jagged Whirls. Whirling Blade inflicts bleeding. 10% weapon damage for 6 seconds. And Keenly Jagged inflicts bleed on critical hit. 10% weapon damage per second for 6 seconds. Powering Whirling Blade. If 2 or more enemies are within the radius, it won't matter. I'm on the boss. Well, I guess maybe if the casters are there at the end, that probably counts as another enemy. So let's look at that. If 2 or more enemies are within its radius while performing a Whirling Blade, gain 24% base damage for each nearby enemy. And then I still go to this flow on the bosses for the extra healing. Stoneform. And then I have this from the raid. I didn't want to regem it. I knew M1 wasn't going to be a big deal. Even M3 would be fine with this, with all the slash conditioning I have. slash protection, refreshing, and health. Now, refreshing, it maxes out my refreshing, so that's okay, but really fortify would be really good against this last boss. And leeching slash hardy. Then we have despise, regenerating, which is bis right there. If you have both of those on there, purified toes, refreshing toes would be better, but is what it is. So with this set, I am basically 37.5% slash damage resistance and 36 ice percent resistance. So pretty protected against both evenly. On the first boss set, 19.9% strike damage resistant, 56.9% ice. Perfectly fine. First boss, easy. And then on the main set, of course, 62.9% void protection. So that's basically how you would set it up. The bosses are independent from the dungeon. You don't need a bunch of void. Now, in the M3s, you do have dots that are applied for using abilities, but you also have lifesteal. So as long as you're hitting the boss, you get 25% lifesteal with it, because that is what the mutation is. Let's look at it real quickly. Glacial Tarn. The last one right here, Weary, applies a slow. Blood Offering, use abilities, apply stack offering, which you're offering blood, basically your health to, you know, doing abilities, causing 4.5 health void damage over time, stacking up 3 times. And then you get 25% life steal to make up for that. So as long as you're hitting the boss, you're good to go. So that is how I set up my sets for tanking. The flail is really, really good at tanking. So is the sword and shield. And my favorite is the great sword with Serenity. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully that clears up some things. They're all fine to use in combination with each other throughout dungeons. There's not one best, but on the bosses, there is only one best, and that is sword and shield because of the leadership. Sword and shield right here. You need the leadership. Empowers group members, increasing their damage 10% by 10%. You never go defensive formation in PvE. Never. On the raid, if your healers have AoE, they need to be on the same team opposite of what the tank is. That way you can have 4 other DPS on your team and you get 40% more damage. That is so important. So throughout the dungeon, use a combination of the flail, great sword, sword and shield if you want, and then on bosses just go sword and shield. You can mix it up with a hammer, or you can go with a flail. In certain dungeons, it's going to call for certain things. It's not a definite one thing fits all. Tanking is ever evolving, and you need to evolve each week with the dungeons, and through each dungeon you need to evolve that way, because I would not run this same setup if I was going with the depths. Wouldn't run maybe the same setup if I was going with Starstone. This would be the easiest one this week to really prepare for. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me and I'll go over it. If you have any suggestions for a video, let me know, and I will talk to y'all later. Drax up!